Hello friends! Today, we're going to hear a wonderful story about a kind and beautiful girl named Cinderella. Let's find out how she overcame her troubles and found her happily ever after. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a sweet and kind girl named Cinderella. She was gentle, beautiful, and always had a smile that could brighten anyone's day. But poor Cinderella didn't have an easy life. After her mother passed away, she was left to live with her cruel stepmother, who was jealous of Cinderella's charm and kindness. The stepmother had two daughters of her own, named Anastasia and Drusilla. They were just as unkind as their mother. Together, they made Cinderella do all the household chores. Every morning, long before the sun rose, Cinderella had to start the fire to warm the house. She cooked all the meals, worked tirelessly in the kitchen, and kept the fire going throughout the day. Because she spent so much time near the fire, ashes and cinders often covered her clothes and body. People say her real name was Ella, but her stepmother and stepsisters mockingly called her Cinderella because of the cinders on her clothes. Despite their cruelty, Cinderella never complained and continued to do her best. To make matters worse, she was forced to live in a small, dusty attic while her stepsisters dressed in fine gowns and enjoyed a life of comfort. Even though her life was hard, Cinderella found joy in her small attic. Two little mice named Jack and Gus, along with a group of chirping birds, became her best friends. They kept her company and filled her days with happiness. Their cheerful chatter gave Cinderella the strength to keep going, even when things seemed hopeless. One day, an exciting news spread throughout the kingdom. The king and queen were hosting a grand royal ball. It was time for the prince to find a bride, and every maiden in the land was invited. The announcement created a buzz of excitement. Young women everywhere dreamed of attending, wearing their finest gowns, and dancing with the prince. At Cinderella's home, her stepsisters, Anastasia and Drusilla, were overjoyed. "The prince might choose me," exclaimed Anastasia. "No, it'll be me," argued Drusilla. They spent weeks preparing for the ball, planning their outfits, fixing their hair, and even practicing their dance moves. Soon, a royal messenger arrived at their door and handed an elegant invitation to Lady Tremaine, Cinderella's stepmother. Lady Tremaine read it aloud, her eyes glinting with delight as she realized this was an opportunity for her daughters. She immediately announced, "Cinderella, you must stitch two magnificent gowns for Anastasia and Drusilla. Make them the most beautiful gowns they've ever worn." Cinderella nodded and replied softly, "Yes, stepmother." Deep inside, she wished she could attend the ball too, even just to experience a glimpse of the magic she had heard about in her mother's stories. But Lady Tremaine had other plans. To make sure Cinderella wouldn't have the chance to go, she kept her busy with endless chores. As Cinderella worked tirelessly, she watched her stepsister's excitement with a sad smile, knowing she wouldn't be able to share in the joy. Lady Tremaine made it clear Cinderella would stay home while her stepsisters attended the grand ball. The night of the royal ball finally arrived. Cinderella watched sadly as her stepsisters, Anastasia and Drusilla, dressed in the beautiful gowns she had stitched, prepared to leave. With their mother, Lady Tremaine, they departed for the palace, their excitement filling the air. Left behind in her old clothes, Cinderella sat by the fireplace, her heart heavy with sorrow. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered a quiet wish, longing for just a glimpse of the magic her mother had once spoken about. Suddenly, the room was filled with a soft, glowing light, and a warm, sweet voice spoke gently. "Why are you crying, my dear?" Cinderella turned and saw a beautiful figure surrounded by a golden glow. It was her fairy godmother. Cinderella explained everything, how her stepmother and stepsisters had treated her unfairly, how she had worked tirelessly, and how she had dreamed of going to the ball but was forbidden to attend. The fairy godmother smiled kindly and said, "Don't worry, my child. You shall go to the ball." With a wave of her wand, the fairy godmother worked her magic. First, she touched Cinderella's head, and instantly, she was clean and radiant. Her messy hair was styled into an elegant updo with a golden band. Then, with another wave, Cinderella's old rags transformed into a magnificent gown. The shimmering fabric sparkled as if woven from starlight. The fairy godmother smiled and tapped her wand again. On Cinderella's feet appeared the most delicate glass slippers, sparkling with every color of the rainbow. Cinderella gasped, marveling at the transformation. "But how will I get to the ball?" Cinderella asked. The fairy godmother chuckled. "Leave that to me." With a flick of her wand, a nearby pumpkin turned into a stunning golden carriage. Then, she waved her wand at two little mice in the corner, transforming them into strong, handsome horses to pull the carriage. Before Cinderella climbed in, the fairy godmother gave her a gentle warning. "Remember, my dear, this magic will only last until midnight. When the clock strikes 12, everything will return to its original form. You must leave the palace by then." Cinderella nodded, her face glowing with gratitude. "Thank you, fairy godmother. I promise to return before midnight." As she rode off in the magical carriage, her heart was filled with joy. For the first time in so long, She felt like a princess. When Cinderella arrived at the palace, she was in awe. The grand halls glittered with golden chandeliers, and the music of violins echoed through the air. The ball was magnificent, filled with young maidens dressed in their finest, all hoping to win the prince's heart. Inside, the prince stood among the crowd, looking lost and uncertain. Despite the dazzling display of beauty, no one had captured his attention until Cinderella arrived. The moment Cinderella entered the ballroom, the entire room fell silent. All heads turned to admire her grace and beauty. She looked like a dream, her gown shimmering under the grand chandeliers. Even her stepmother and stepsisters, Anastasia and Drizella, were awestruck, unable to recognize her. Whispers spread among the guests as they wondered who this mysterious, elegant lady could be. Cinderella walked into the ballroom with her head held high, exuding a royal air. The prince, who had been feeling disheartened by the endless line of young ladies vying for his attention, suddenly found himself captivated. His eyes were locked on Cinderella, and he couldn't look away. With a charming smile, the prince approached her. "May I have this dance?" he asked, extending his hand. Cinderella curtsied gracefully. "It would be my honor, Your Highness," she replied softly. As they began to dance, it felt as though the rest of the world faded away. They glided across the ballroom floor in perfect harmony, their movements so enchanting that all eyes remained fixed on them. The prince and Cinderella laughed and talked as they danced to every song. For the first time in her life, Cinderella felt truly happy and free, as though she were living in a fairy tale. The other young ladies at the ball, including Anastasia and Drizella, were overcome with jealousy, glaring at Cinderella as the prince gave her his undivided attention. Yet, Cinderella paid no mind to them. She was lost in the magic of the evening. But as the evening wore on, the sound of a bell tolling broke through her blissful haze. Dawn! Dawn! It was the palace clock, signaling midnight. Cinderella froze, her eyes darting to the grand clock towering over the ballroom. Panic set in as she remembered her fairy godmother's warning. The magic will only last until midnight. "Oh no!" she gasped. "It's almost midnight." Turning to the prince with regret in her eyes, she said, "I'm so sorry, Your Highness, but I must go." The prince reached for her hand. "Wait, please don't leave yet," he called, but the sound of the clock drowned out his voice. Without another word, Cinderella grabbed her dress and ran, her heart beating fast. Her shiny glass slippers made soft clinking sounds as she rushed down the big staircase. At the bottom, one of her slippers slipped off her foot, but she didn't stop to pick it up. She disappeared into the night as a final stroke of midnight rang through the palace, her gown turning back into rags. The prince reached the bottom of the staircase and picked up the delicate glass slipper she had left behind. He held it carefully, knowing it was the only clue to find the mysterious girl who had captured his heart. The next day, determined to find her, the prince announced he would visit every house in the kingdom. He and his attendants began their search, traveling from home to home, but no one could fit the delicate slipper. When they arrived at Cinderella's cottage, her stepsisters eagerly tried to force their feet into the glass slipper, but it was no use. The slipper was far too small. As they struggled, the prince asked, "Is there anyone else in the house?" Reluctantly, Lady Tremaine mentioned Cinderella, though she mocked the idea that the slipper could belong to her. Hidden in the kitchen, Cinderella hesitated, but her heart filled with hope as she stepped forward and asked, "May I try it on?" The prince nodded, and Cinderella carefully slipped her foot into the glass slipper. It fit perfectly. The prince's face lit up with joy. He gazed into her eyes and said, "It's you. I found you." The stepsisters were shocked and tried to apologize, but Cinderella forgave them with a kind heart. "It's okay," she said gently. "Kindness always wins in the end." So children, with happiness in her heart, Cinderella joined the prince at the palace. Her friends, including her loyal mice, celebrated her joy. Cinderella and the prince were married in a grand ceremony, and they lived happily ever after, showing that kindness, goodness, and a little bit of magic can change everything. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more fun and exciting stories. See you next time.